Dave Filoni is often hailed as the saviour of Star Wars, but does he really live up to the hype? Some view him as the second coming of Jesus Christ himself. But today we're taking a hard look at his writing, specifically through the lens of the Ahsoka series. If you've ever felt like something just doesn't click with the show, you're not alone, and we're going to break down exactly why that is. While Dave Filoni has been involved in many Star Wars projects, he's very rarely credited as a writer. But Ahsoka is one of the few where he took full writing control, writing the whole thing from start to finish, and we'll explore what worked, what didn't, and how things could have been improved. As a long-time Star Wars fan, I've respected Dave Filoni's contributions to the franchise, but with the Ahsoka series, where he wrote the entire thing, I was left truly baffled by some of his choices, and let's unpack that together.
This is where the fun begins.
Well, let's start with the title character. Ahsoka's characterization throughout the series is inconsistent and frustrating. In some scenes she's stoic and emotionless, almost like she's sleepwalking through the whole plot. In others she suddenly shows warmth and care, but without any clear reason for this shift. Dave Filoni must have been giving Leslie Headland writing advice, because this inconsistency makes it hard to connect with Ahsoka's character or understand her motivations. Dave Filoni completely fumbles Ahsoka's characterization, making her come across as an incoherent mess. One minute she's distant and detached, the next she's showing a bit of emotion, but it's so jarring that it doesn't feel earned. This lack of consistency with her character makes it difficult to relate to and even harder to root for, which is a huge problem when she's supposed to be the show's main character. Dave Filoni should have committed to a clear and consistent character arc for Ahsoka, showing her gradual emotional growth. If Ahsoka starts the series as cold and detached, then Filoni should have introduced specific events or interactions that slowly bring out her warmer side. For example, he could have shown her forming a stronger bond with Sabine over time, with specific character moments where Ahsoka's walls start to come down. A key scene where she finally opens up about her past with Anakin to Sabine, revealing her fears and doubts, would have given depth to her character and made her emotional shifts feel more natural. This approach would have made Ahsoka's journey more relatable and compelling. The series features characters from Star Wars Rebels like Sabine, Hera, and Ezra Bridger, but Dave Filoni is lazy here. He makes absolutely no effort to introduce them to viewers who might not have seen Rebels before, and to be honest, I kind of fall into that category because I've only seen a couple of episodes of Rebels. Dave Filoni assumes that everyone watching Ahsoka is already deeply invested in these characters from Rebels, which is a huge mistake, and like I said, it's lazy. For those who haven't seen the animated series, these characters feel like shallow, undeveloped sidekicks rather than integral parts of the story. This alienates new viewers and prevents them from connecting with the characters, making it harder for them to get invested in the series as a whole.
That was the plan. Not a great plan.
Dave Filoni should have taken the time to reintroduce these characters in a way that both honours their past and makes them compelling for newcomers. So much for inclusivity, eh? For example, he could have included flashbacks that highlights key moments from Rebels, showing why Sabine's search for Ezra is so important, or why Hera is such a respected leader. Also, early episodes should have included scenes where these characters' personalities, skills, and relationships are explored in more depth, allowing new viewers to understand and care about them as much as long-time fans do. This would have made the series more accessible and engaging for a broader audience. Sabine handing over the star map to Baylan Skoll in episode 4 makes absolutely no sense and feels totally forced. We're supposed to believe she's so desperate to find Ezra that she'd make this huge mistake, but there's no real emotional build-up to justify it. Instead, it just comes off as a lazy way to push the plot forward. Dave Filoni's writing is full of these weird character decisions that just don't make any sense. Characters do things that go completely against their established personalities, and it's clear that these decisions are just there to keep the plot moving, not because they make any real sense. It's like Filoni didn't even try to think through why these characters would act the way they do. And it shows. It shows.
Thought we wouldn't notice, but we did.
If Sabine's decision to hand over the star map was supposed to be believable, Filoni needed to crank up her desperation and internal conflict. Picture this, Sabine's having intense, haunting visions of Ezra in danger, feeling like she's failed him. Maybe Ahsoka's been growing distant, making Sabine feel even more isolated and desperate. In this scenario, handing over the star map starts to make sense because it's rooted in real emotional turmoil. Filoni should have made every character's decision felt earned and had real consequences. The reunion between Sabine and Ezra, which should have been a big emotional payoff, falls completely flat. There's no build-up and the dialogue is so weak that the scene in episode 6 where they finally meet feels rushed and hollow. The show doesn't take the time to explore their relationship or the impact of their long separation. Filoni's failure to create any emotional resonance is just plain embarrassing.
How embarrassing. embarrassing. How embarrassing.
Moments that should have hit hard emotionally are instead just there. The reunion between Sabine and Ezra, which should have been a huge emotional moment, is shockingly underwhelming and leaves you wondering why you even cared in the first place. The whole series suffers from this lack of emotional depth, turning what could have been a powerful character-driven story into something that's cold and unengaging. The reunion between Sabine and Ezra needed way more build-up and tension. Filoni should have crafted scenes where they struggle to reconnect, showing the emotional scars from their time apart. A quiet, vulnerable moment where Sabine opens up about her guilt and fears, and Ezra reassures her. This could have provided the emotional punch that was missing. And with Ahsoka's reflections on Anakin, Filoni should have gone way deeper, maybe with a series of flashbacks to show her grappling with her past and finally coming to terms with it. These emotional beats should have been at the heart of the series, grounding all the action in something real and meaningful. Again, much like The Acolyte, the pacing in the Ahsoka series is a complete disaster. Some episodes drag on forever, where nothing really happens, while others cram in way too much at once. The early episodes are bogged down with exposition, while the later ones rush through major plot points, leaving little room for character moments or reflection. Filoni just doesn't know how to keep the story moving at a consistent, engaging pace, resulting in a series that swings wildly from boring, drawn-out scenes to rushed, chaotic moments. This total lack of pacing not only stifles character development but also wrecks any sense of momentum, making the series feel like a chaotic mess that's tough to sit through, to be honest. Filoni needed to balance the pacing better by making sure each episode advanced the plot while also deepening the characters. Early on he should have mixed in more action with the world building, keeping the story dynamic. Mid-season, Filoni could have thrown in a subplot where Ahsoka and her team face a big challenge that forces them to take risks and grow, keeping the tension high. The final episode should have focused on delivering payoffs for the series' conflicts, with moments of reflection and character growth that felt earned. A clear structure with each episode building towards a climax would have made the series way more engaging. Thrawn's return, which should have been a huge deal, ends up being pretty lame. He's barely in the show, and when he does show up, he doesn't do much. The character that some fans were dying to see is just a shadow of his former self, lacking the strategic genius that made him so awesome in the expanded universe. Filoni just completely drops the ball on fan expectations, and it's a huge letdown. Thrawn should have been brought into the story way earlier, with a plot that actually showcases his tactical brilliance. Filoni needed to show Thrawn orchestrating some masterful plan that puts the hero on the back foot, making his return feel inevitable and terrifying. A specific scene where Thrawn outsmarts Hera in a space battle using his knowledge to predict her moves would have really driven home his genius. Filoni should have made Thrawn a real threat, actively challenging Ahsoka and her team, instead of just teasing his return. This would have lived up to fan expectations and made the series way more interesting. Morgan Elsbeth, who was built up as a big threat in The Mandalorian, is nothing more than a generic villain with barely any development. Her motivations are paper thin, and she's mostly there to move the plot along. Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati, while intriguing at first, also fall flat due to a lack of depth and clear purpose. Filoni's take on villains is an absolute letdown. Instead of giving us complex, menacing threats that push the heroes to their limits, we get a bunch of bland, undercooked characters who barely make an impact. Morgan Elsbeth is particularly disappointing. She's got zero depth and could have been replaced with any random bad guy. Baylan and Shin had potential but ended up being just as forgettable because they're so poorly developed. This complete failure to create any compelling villain sucks all the tension out of the series and leaves the story feeling flat. Morgan Elsbeth needed way more backstory and menace. Filoni should have explored her Night Sister roots, showing how she becomes so ruthless. Maybe flashbacks to her rise in the remnants of the Empire involving some dark, twisted rituals would have given her much needed depth. As for Baylan and Shin, Filoni should have fleshed out their backstories, showing us exactly why they turned against the Jedi. A flashback to a key moment of betrayal or loss could have provided the depth and motivation they needed, making their conflict with Ahsoka more personal and impactful. The action sequences in the Ahsoka series are a complete snooze fest. Filoni really drops the ball again here by delivering fights that are just plain boring and lack any real excitement. The choreography feels lazy, the stakes are nowhere to be found, and the whole thing just falls flat. Everything's falling flat. Instead of gripping battles that leave you breathless, we get filler that does absolutely nothing but waste time. Like the fight between Ahsoka and Marok in episode 4. They come off as completely uninspired and feel like they were thrown together without much thought. The fights don't have the punch or intensity that you'd expect from a series focused on Jedi battles. Having Sabine survive what should have been fatal was a catastrophic mistake, because it told the audience that we don't need to take the stakes seriously moving forwards. Anakin Skywalker's appearances in the series, like his Force visions or flashbacks, lack the emotional depth and impact they should have had. Instead of exploring his relationship with Ahsoka in a meaningful way, these moments come across as fan service that doesn't add much to the story. Dave Filoni's handling of Anakin's character is clumsy. Rather than using Anakin's presence to deepen the emotional stakes or provide significant insight into Ahsoka's struggles, his inclusion feels more like a nod to fans than a meaningful part of the narrative. It's clear that Filoni missed an opportunity to fully explore the weight of Anakin's legacy and how it affects Ahsoka's journey. Filoni should have integrated Anakin's character more seamlessly into the story. Instead of brief, disjointed cameos, he could have used Anakin's presence to drive the narrative forward. For example, Anakin could have appeared in more detailed flashbacks or in Ahsoka's moments of intense conflict, revealing deeper layers of their past interactions and how they shape her current decisions. This would have provided a richer, more impactful connection to Ahsoka's internal struggles and the series' overall theme. And there we have it, people. After years of Dave Filoni learning the art of storytelling through George Lucas on The Clone Wars, with Jon Favreau on The Mandalorian, and Rian Johnson on The Last Jedi, this was the result. We've torn through the Ahsoka series to uncover where it stumbled and where it missed the mark. From Ahsoka's identity crisis to the awkward cameos by Anakin Skywalker for nostalgia bait purposes. Whether you're a die-hard Dave Filoni or Star Wars Rebels fan, or neither, it's clear that this series had some serious room for improvement. If you agree with my points or think I missed something, drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you again next time.